everything Mid-Columbia Conference right here. This is MCC Live on 1340 ESPN.
It's MCC Live on the Tri-Cities leader in sports, 1340 ESPN. I'm Will Bradley. Jamie Council is here with me. Happy Friday, Jamie.
Happy Friday, Will. I can't believe we're into February.
That's right. The Super Bowl, or the big game, as a lot of people call it, because you can't say Super Bowl. You got to be with 1340 ESPN. On Super Bowl Sunday, I'm going to be at Wild Horse Resort and Casino off I-84 in Pendleton. It is their Red Zone party, Eastern Oregon's best big game viewing party. Starts at 3 o'clock. Come on out. You know, win some prizes, get some great food.
Sounds like a good time.
Hoping the game's good.
Right. That's kind of one thing in Super Bowl, but you've had so much food by that point. You're like, okay, I guess I don't have to stay up and watch the fourth quarter.
I guess it's a good thing that my team isn't anywhere near the game, because I'd be a little more on edge.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it can go both ways, and I'm kind of, roll with the punches, roll with what is. I always appreciate a good game, so.
My dad always would be like that, because I'd ask him, who do you want to win? I don't really care. I just hope it's a good game. So that's how I actually am for this game. I'm turning into my dad.
Wow.
Yeah, I know.
You're like those commercials. Don't end up like your parents.
I'm just like those commercials. That's right. The Mid-Columbia Conference, a lot is going on right now. This isn't just about boys and girls basketball either. It's about all the sports. We talk all the sports here on MCC Live. The spring championship locations have been announced.
Yeah, that's something that constantly changes, and we just learned about the championship locations in the spring, as well as other things moving forward. And the big change that I took from it is the 3A and 4A tournament is being moved out of the Tri-Cities. Geisa Stadium, the home of the Tri-City Dust Devils, hosted it last year. So that event will now be held in Funko Field in Everett, which is the home of the Everett Aqua Sox, who play the Dust Devils. So still a good stadium, but it was sad to see that go out of the Tri-Cities.
And for the 2A and the 1A tournaments, it's going to be in Bellingham.
Yeah, all of the baseball tournaments are going to be over on the west side. Well, Ephrata is hosting the 2B, 1B. So yeah, it's not going to be in the Tri-City. So it's a big change from before. But softball, there will be 4A and 1A softball tournaments at the Columbia Playfields in Richland. Because they are combining the 4A and 1A, the tournaments will begin a day earlier. So there's a lot of changes. It's kind of always going to be a moving target when it comes to locations, dates, and I believe that we'll be seeing a lot more changes. Specifically basketball, I've heard some rumors that will be changing locations, where it's always been Spokane, Tacoma, and Yakima. So nothing is official. I'm not going to put anything out there, but that's something that I've heard rumblings of as they look for tournaments in the future. And then also a big one too, track and field. They're not going to be at Eastern Washington University anymore. It's always been at Eastern Washington. So it's going to be moved to Zeffel Stadium at Eisenhower High School in Yakima. So I mean, it's a great stadium, but a lot of people enjoy the atmosphere of being at a D1 college and running around the red fields. And of course, you could fit a lot of people in the stands. Can fit a lot of people in the stands at Zeffel. It's just a different change. It's still here on the east side, but that's a change that was made.
4A tennis is going to be at Kamiakin High School.
It's been a long time tournament, and it was really interesting. I was able to chat with Kamiakin High School's athletic director, Kyle Cowan, just about, all these changes and how it affects ADs, what is their part in it, and he gave me some really great insight.
Well, the WIAA is constantly searching for long-term facilities that they can utilize. And a lot of factors go into that, whether it's cost and location and who's going to be in the tournament, where those schools are located, how can they best facilitate those things. And they evaluate that every year to see who's willing to host, where the manpower is to do that, and where they can fiscally make that possible.
And you as an athletic director, do you have any say in that, or are you just kind of along for the ride?
Well, if we have facilities that are able to host, we can offer those. Or if we know of locations where we have connections and we can prod to them being part of the Tri-City Sports Council. That's one way we kind of get to know different people that have facilities or are part of connections to those facilities, and we can help make that happen.
And with you guys coming up, you'll be hosting the 4A tennis here. So tell me about that process, where you guys are actually, Kamiakin specifically is listed as not just the host city, but the host school.
Yeah. So it's something that we've been doing for years. Mainly it was the 3A tournament. Started back with, some old coaches of ours who took it on and volunteered, and we just kept it ever since. So our coaches do a phenomenal job of running that tournament here at Kamiakin. That's part of the gig. They know what they're doing, and we work closely with the Pacific Clinic and their tennis pro there. And so we can have the two sites. I think we're a valuable resource because we have the outdoor and indoor facilities so close to each other. And, and again, just goes back to schools willing to do it, people willing to do it, have the connections and the manpower to make it happen. We're excited. We love hosting the tennis tournament.
But then being East versus West, there's always a little bit, especially when it comes to the weather. And that was a big change, I guess, was moving baseball, where we just learned that won't be at Giza. So I guess, is that kind of disappointing to see, where sometimes the West side says, oh, we want this? Or, what are your thoughts being an East side school where there is definitely, I've worked in this town, in this state, long enough to know that there's definitely a divide when it comes to East versus West.
I have not experienced that. I'm fairly new to Washington State, right? So I come from Oregon, where it's different there, but I have definitely heard stories of East versus West. I've not experienced that from my side of the table. I'm sure it happens.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is just everybody always takes things personally too, where you take a look, and weather does come into account. So yeah, I've seen a little bit on both sides of that. And you're the athletic director over here at Kamiakin High School. Yes. Tell me how you got to be in the seat you are now.
Fortunate to be here, right? So previous athletic director, Casey Gant, decided to become a middle school principal and open up the job. And my wife is from Kennewick, and so family ties here, and it was a chance to be back with family. And I've wanted to be in the Tri-Cities for a long time. So I'm excited. Love the opportunity to be here.
You are from Oregon, coming from Oregon. Were you born and raised in Oregon?
Yep. On the west side of Oregon. We won't talk about that. No, I lived in Oregon my whole life, and my wife went to college in Oregon. We met there and spent a lot of time in Oregon through our marriage, but it's time for her to come home for a little while.
Working in athletics in Oregon, obviously, it's different, just the whole setups, and you always kind of learn those nuances. What was kind of the toughest learning curve as you're coming here?
Yeah. I think my biggest thing that I just wasn't aware of is the eligibility pieces. Eligibility in Oregon is done much different for student athletes, and also the classification and districting here in Washington is a lot different. To have, currently the 9 districts and conferences within those districts, and the way they break up the state is much different. Oregon is just classification and leagues, and it's a little bit different how they design the setup of the state.
Yeah, and being in the MCC, you're also in kind of a unique situation with Hermiston.
Yep.
And, Larry Ush over there, especially during the pandemic, there was kind of that divide. So is there anything that you've kind of noticed maybe kind of gives you an advantage of being a part of a league that has an Oregon school, or maybe just an ear for Larry Usher?
We love Hermiston. We enjoy having Hermiston a part of the Mid-Columbia Conference. I think it gives us a unique perspective just because we know how it works. People from the outside, other conferences don't necessarily understand how the inner workings happen with crossing borders and everything, but it's smooth, and Larry Escher makes it it works well with Larry and Hermiston.
Yeah, I've had extensive conversations with him about that. Like I said, specifically through the pandemic, which is tough for everybody.
Yeah.
And being an athletic director, you wear a lot of different hats. What is your favorite hat that you wear in your position?
Well, I wear 2 hats: athletic director, assistant principal, and athletic director is the one I enjoy the most. But I definitely love just mentoring coaches, being around them and the kids, and what we can do to provide a best possible experience for our student athletes.
And what would you say is your least favorite part of what you do?
dealing with any sort of discipline. There's a reason I am in the position I'm in. It's tough when you deal with disciplining student athletes and something they love to be a part of. And, that's one reason I enjoy it. I enjoy being a part of what kids like to be doing, right? And so it's hard when you have to deal with those discipline side of things.
Yeah.
Overall, it's a great job.
I can definitely see that where, you like to see kids involved in it, but there's a certain point where they can't be, and you're the one that has to keep it real, so to speak.
Yep.
Kamiakin basketball, you guys are having a great year, and I guess just talk a little bit about, you're the athletic director, and you play a part in their success. The girls tonight fighting for an MCC championship, as well as on the boys' side, if they win against Richland, that there's still a chance for them too, sitting 2 games behind.
Yeah, we have incredible coaches at Kamiakin. Both Brian and Lane and their staff have done a phenomenal job with our kids. I think they every year put themselves in position to contend for a conference championship or bid to state or whatever. They just do a phenomenal job with our student athletes. Our kids are great competitors, and it's fun to watch. It's fun to be a part of, and you just kind of point them in the direction, and they do the work and get it done. And
Kamiakin, you guys do have such a history of great players. I mean, last year, Belito, this year, you have 2 Division I athletes on the girls' side, as well as it goes back, as well as I see in the coming years too, with a lot of talent there, that the tradition is going to continue. What do you attribute that to?
Coaches and the longevity of great coaches. Prior to me coming here, the athletic directors before me, and they've made some incredible hires. We do good things to hold on to good people, and I don't give my coaches credit enough. They do a phenomenal job of just managing their programs, putting kids in positions to be successful, and that's what it's about. They put in the extra time to make our program successful
and make you look good.
Yeah, it's sure. Yeah, it's their job. Yeah, they're doing a good job.
There really are a lot of factors that come into play when you're determining the sites for all these events. And I know that you want to play nice. Do you think there's a divide, though, between East and West?
Yes and no. So one thing we have to take a look at is when it comes to, the East side is always hurt when, for example, the Kennewick football team that kept on having to drive to the West side time after time, all of that they kept on not getting a good seed. So therefore they're making that. And any team here that makes it far has to go to the West side. And they're like, a lot of tournaments are on the East side, but what are the big ones on the West side? 3A and 4A basketball and football. Those are kind of the moneymaker sports, quote unquote. And so it's just like you keep them over there. So I get the unhappiness of the East side, but most of the bigger schools are on the West side. So when it comes to when taking a look at overall, that is what comes into play. Now, with that being said, I do get when it comes to the weather, having the football over on the West side when they were in the dome, that makes sense. Most of the teams are on the West side. It's a great venue, a great indoor venue, and it's going to be cold anywhere in the state. But now that they're all outside, it's better weather over here. And then even moving the baseball over to the West side, what if it's raining? That they might be like, okay, well, we got this tournament and then it's going to be, rained out. That's always a possibility. Like I kind of mentioned, a lot of it is personal feel where you're like, this isn't fair, but life isn't fair. Most of the bigger schools are on the West side. So it's kind of how it goes where you take a look at the majority. But there are a couple times where it's just like, the East side does get the short end of the stick, but sometimes there is a reason for it that, we might not be happy about, if that makes sense. So it's not just East side, blah, 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 but sometimes there are legitimate reasons. So I would say taking a look at things, it's a little bit of both when it comes to the West Side schools have a lot of the 3A and 4A, and we have a lot of small surrounding schools, and we do get a lot of tournaments over here as well. There are a lot of tournaments that play into that, but I think it's just we feel hurt because the big ones are on the West Side, so it's kind of like, oh, we care about you, we'll give you our leftovers. And that's how they feel a lot. But most of the bigger schools are on the west side, so you have to take a look at it from that standpoint.
And I'm surprised that we get any championship.
Really?
Yeah, I am, because normally I think a lot of states, they tend to focus a lot of it all on the major metro in the state, regardless of the location of that metro in the state. Like in Minnesota, most everything's in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area, which is in really the southeastern corner of the state. So a lot of schools from up north have to travel basically about as far as Spokane to Seattle or even farther.
Well, if you think about it, that was already set into place, that they have a set place to play. I mean, that's what he said. You need people to work the tournament. You need a location. You need a venue, and they have that in place. For example, I lived in North Dakota, and state football, everybody plays on the NDSU field.
Fargo Dome.
It's the Fargo Dome, exactly. But whereas Fargo, it's on the border of Minnesota and North Dakota. It's over on the east side. So if you're a West school, but nobody complains about it, you're playing at the Fargo Dome. It's a great venue. It's a special event. It is how it is. So nobody complains about that. But when you're moving locations...
Here we complain about having to go to the west side.
But they're changing locations, and if you're going to the west side to play at a high school out in the rain when it's better weather over here, it's not like you're playing in Lumen Field. It's not like you're playing at Husky Stadium. So you have to take a look at it for what it is. It's not this great event. So some states put on great events that you're like, I get to go to the state tournament. They take care of me. I know what to expect. These are wonderful venues. Then you feel like you're honored to go to the big city. But no, you're going to high schools. This is always changing. And a lot of it does come to a money thing. So like I said, with basketball, I expect changes there as venues up their price. So it sounds like money is going into it, where I'll wait to talk about that. But it does sound like some changes where if venues up their price, they're always looking. And that was something with the Tacoma Dome as well with
Why
football.
did they get rid of the Tacoma Dome?
So for football, they revamped the Tacoma Dome. The turf wasn't good, and you can't even see the field on half of it. So It just wasn't conducive for football games because they wanted to make it more like a concert venue.
Yeah.
Because in football, you have to put some of the stands out, but then there's this big wall, so you really can't see over it. I've been in there, but I haven't seen it try to be set up that way. But ever since we lost the dome for playing football, there has been a lot of discussion of what it should be, because when Kennewick went to the state championship game, and even leading up to that, I went to their practices. I was covering them. They were dipping balls in water. They had trash cans full of water that they were dipping the ball in, knowing that they're going to go play in the rain. It's not ideal, but they were preparing for the game, and they were able to do good with it. But when it comes to weather, that's something that you take a look at the whole experience when it comes to fans, when it comes to players, when it comes to parents. And even if you do, let's say, play at Lumen Field and they let the WIAA do it and they're not charging, there's still going to be charges of, bigger hotel rooms if you're in Seattle, parking.
Yeah, everything's so much more expensive over there.
And if there's any concessions. Right now, what hurts Washington is that there are changes. Like you said, Minnesota, they do this. North Dakota, they do this. A lot of states have that in place, and people are comfortable with it. People know what to expect. But when you're always changing things, everybody has an opinion.
Gotta get some consistency with the venues for these championship events.
Absolutely.
Coming back in just minutes, we're going to talk about boys basketball. Still an unbeaten team in conference. The Richland Bombers still going strong.
Boys basketball coming up.
It's MCC Live. Everything about the Mid-Columbia Conference on 1340 ESPN. And MCC Live is brought to you by Christine Connolly Realty. This show wouldn't be possible without our realtor, Christine Connolly. Just like she helps us highlight local athletes, she'd love to help you buy or sell your home. Check out Christine Connolly at asyouwishhouses.com.
Have Christine Connolly help you achieve your housing goals and be your genie in a bottle.
As you wish. Buying or selling a home is a huge decision. You need someone that you trust and trust that they know what they're doing. As a second-generation realtor, I know how to anticipate the needs of my clients, and I make sure I'm up to date on the latest real estate trends in the Valley, along with buying programs that clients can take advantage of. I go above and beyond for all of my clients.
Contact Christine Connolly online or on Facebook at As You Wish Houses.
Part of Coldwell Banker Tomlinson.
MCC Live continues on the Tri-Cities leader in sports, 1340 ESPN.
And we're back with more MCC Live on 1340 ESPN. Jamie Council, along with me, Will Bradley, and this is 1340 ESPN. This segment of MCC Live is brought to you by BNI. If you're looking to give your business an edge, consider BNI with over 10,000 chapters worldwide. Check them out at teambni.com. And right now we're going to be talking about boys basketball, particularly a team that's still unbeaten in the Mid-Columbia Conference, Jamie.
Yeah, Richland, they're 13-0 in league, and they're 15-2 overall. Still sitting 11th in the state RPI and 4A. They're just looking really good right now.
Very balanced team. I mean, they're scoring 16 more points than anybody in the league. They're second in defense. I still think that RPI ranking is a bit low.
I do too. That was one thing I was wondering with just how that when we're talking East versus West, that's something with RPI. You don't really see how they match up, and you don't get to see them. And so therefore, a lot of teams get overlooked in the RPIs. So when it comes to East versus West, that's kind of hands down. I completely agree. A lot of teams here on the East side do get overlooked. And Richland, I mean, they have Josh Woodard. He's third in scoring, averaging 18.76 points a game. And they're starting five. Lucas Westerfield, eighth in scoring, averaging 13.6. And then as you go down, everybody has something to add. 18, 19, and 20 and 21 are all Richland. You have them in the scoring. So when I said 18, 19, 20, and 21, those are the top scores in the MCC, and those are all Richland. Jack Forbes, Landon Northrope, the only freshman starting for them, Jordan Valencia, and Jace Vopolensky, all of them averaging a little bit above or below 10 points a game. So everybody can put up points. They come at you from everywhere. A really high-powered offense. They're looking really good, so I'm just hoping that they can keep that momentum into districts, into state, and they still haven't won the MCC yet. We'll get into that, but there's a big game tonight. But you take a look, like you mentioned earlier, that they are scoring 16 points more than anybody in the league, and that's a lot.
That's
exactly.
a lot. And they're second in defense. The team that's top in the conference in defense is that second-place team, the Kamiakin Braves, 48.8 points allowed in league play this year. They're 11-2 in conference, and they're 15th in RPI.
They are. That's something that more people are looking at the East, where before we had a couple of teams. So Kamiakin, they're led by Peter Dress, second in scoring in the Mid-Columbia Conference, and he's averaging over 20 points a game, 20.65. So they are good. I would say that maybe just a little bit inconsistent, and that does show when you take a look at their wins and losses. You're like, oh, how did they lose to Walla Walla if they're this great team? It was a 2-point loss. It was close. They lost a lot of talent. So losing all those seniors, they're finding their identity. And Peter Dress has been somebody that they've leaned on, and he's kind of their crutch, but you can't live or die by Peter Dress. So other players have been stepping up, but that's something that they are going to need to find a little bit deeper of a roster. Javier Sideretz is 11th in scoring, averaging 12.59 points a game. So that's just something that when I'm taking a look at if they can make a run, if they can make it deeper in playoffs, that they're just going to need to find a little bit more depth and consistency, because you have to bring your best every game, and that's something that we haven't seen from Kamiakin this year.
That's something, if you can focus on Peter Dress. Teams that have one main player, you get the ball out of their hands, you make someone else beat you. Teams can beat Kamiakin if you can get Peter Dress to give up the ball, make someone else on that roster beat you. Speaking of making a run, we have Chiawana, third in the conference, Walla Walla, Kennewick, all above 500. Which one of those teams do you think has a chance to make a run here at the end of the season?
So I really do like Chiawana. So Chiawana is 18th in RPI. They are 9-5. And we're talking about Kamiakin inconsistent. That is exactly what we have seen from Chiawana, but they have a lot of seniors. So they are a senior-driven team. The problem with them is the inconsistency that they shoot, that they don't really rely on the boards. They rely on their shooting. So if they're not feeling it shooting, it shows in the score.
Outside shooting.
Outside shooting, absolutely. So that's something that they do a lot, but when they do it well, I mean, they just put up 94 points in their win earlier this week to Pasco. And, Pasco isn't at the top of the MCC, but over 90 points, they were shooting well.
Yeah.
And so that's something that if they are hitting their shots, they do have the depth there. They have a lot of seniors, great senior leadership. And then as more people have been rotating in, Tyson Landoni as a junior, he had a great game on Tuesday. So their players are looking really good. There's somebody that inconsistency, but if they flip the on switch and keep it on, they do have the talent there. Donovan Young, 6'6", younger brother of Kobe Young, a Division I basketball player. Cade Smith, a multiple sport athlete. They do have talent there. So again, with the number 2 and number 3, Chiawana, I think just inconsistency is the only thing that plagues them, but they do have the talent.
The thing about jump shooting teams is if they're not falling, if you don't have an inside game, if all you do is rely on the outside shot, if those shots aren't going down, if someone put a lid on the basket, then you got to adjust. It's going to be a tougher game for you. So who are the top scorers right now in the league? We got 7 different schools in the top 7, Jamie.
Yeah, the MCC, that's something
balance.
You love to see is the balance. We already went over Peter Dress is number 2. Josh Woodard is number 3, but number 1 out of Hermiston is Grant Olson. And this is a special week for him. He scored 42 points in the win against Hanford, and that is a career high 42 points. So congratulations, Grant Olson, on reaching his 1,000 points. He's also leading the league in scoring, and he's averaging 23.5 points a game.
So he's 1/3 of Hermiston's offense, basically.
And Hermiston are sitting at 6 and 8, but they're getting wins. They're in the middle. So Grant Olson has definitely been a bright spot in that offense.
A lot of good stuff with boys basketball in the MCC. I really think Richland's getting disrespected. I think people are saying that it's not a quality conference because when you're running the table in a conference, that's got to mean something. And the MCC usually pumps out several quality teams, and there's 2 that are top 15 in RPI.
You don't want to discount the league, but there's a lot of great basketball. You take a look at the history of great basketball players, and there's some great ones out of Seattle, especially in the 3A with, the Metro Leagues and stuff. There hasn't been a championship team. There's been good teams, and the Pasco girls last year placed 3rd, Richland placed 6th, and so not putting them in the top 10. Will they finish in top 10? I do think that they deserve a couple more spots higher, but last year Kamiakin lost in the quarterfinals to Union. Mm-hmm. So when it comes to the Dome, I feel like it's kind of one of those things where everybody remembers your losses but not your wins. So it is a disrespect where they're maybe not getting us higher, but they are recognizing, oh, you could be good, but we're on the west side and we don't see you, and you didn't win last year and remember your loss.
For people that are more familiar with college basketball than high school basketball, what's the conference equivalent to the MCC like in the college game? Would it be like a mid-major, Mountain West or something?
Yeah, I would say it would be a lot like the Big Sky. And when you think of the Big Sky, you kind of think of, underdog mentality. Yeah. Because they really do have the underdog mentality, and 2 big schools in the Big Sky, obviously the Montana schools, and they kind of have that.
Who both stink this year, by the way, in basketball. Come on. You cover the Eastern games for ESPN+. Both the Montana teams, they're no bueno this year.
But the Montana State girls are sitting high. And, Eastern, they're running the table. And one thing that I have noticed covering more of the Big Sky is the Big Sky is, I think their headquarters are in Montana. So whenever you listen to anything Big Sky, they just kiss the shoes of the Montana schools. And
it's the Dutton family. It's the Yellowstone effect, Jamie.
So I listened to a podcast. I was driving to an Eastern game because I call those games on ESPN Plus every once in a while, and I've been doing more games. So anyways, I'm like, I'm going to listen to a podcast. I'm sure there's something out there on Big Sky, and it's like this Big Sky podcast. They just talked about Montana, and then at the very end was like, oh, by the way, Eastern Washington, they are 9-0.
By the way, they're unbeaten.
Yeah, and I was like, are you kidding me? This is not about the conference. This is just about making the Montana schools feel special. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of great athletes. There's been a lot of great teams. I am a big proponent. I mean, Alex Singleton, one of my favorite players in the NFL, went to Montana State, went up to the CFL before.
Played for Calgary, and now he's with the Broncos.
Yeah, and he was with the Eagles before when he made the jump from Canada. But I don't want to discount Montana schools. I'm not saying I don't like them. I'm just saying give respect to the schools that are doing good. I don't know. Maybe the MCC is the Eastern Washington of the Big Sky.
Well, I don't know. I mean, you look at their non-conference results. I think they'd be a higher-ranked conference than the Big Sky, really, comparison-wise. Or maybe you're just using this as a way to shamelessly plug your ESPN Plus broadcast.
I was just thinking that. It's not like a shameless plug, but it's just I cover them more.
There's nothing wrong with shamelessness. This is radio, after all. Nothing wring with shameless plugging.
And
Nothing
I cover them. So maybe a little bit, but at the same time, you know what you know, and I'm smart enough to know what I don't know. There is definitely an underdog mentality here in the Tri-Cities, and I see that in the Big Sky. So it's just the underdog mentality of I've always been tied to it a little bit. Shameless plug, familiarity, whatever it is.
Oh, by the way,
MCC.
catch Jamie out on ESPN Plus. She's doing Eastern Washington games.
Yeah, I'll be on this Saturday. Eastern Washington women, their top two players out. Who's left because they really relied on Jadia Martin. She's such a good player, but she's out indefinitely, and they're able to pull out the win against Sacramento State last night, and then they play Portland State on Saturday as they try to climb the ladder as the tournament approaches.
Check out Jamie tomorrow, Eastern Washington against Portland State on ESPN Plus. Coming back, we're going to talk girls basketball. We have another undefeated team in the MCC. Some scandal, though. Some asterisks, maybe.
Who are we, the Astros?
We're going to talk about the Kamiakin Astros coming up next. MCC Live. It's brought to you in this segment by BNI. If you're looking to give your business an edge, consider BNI. Over 10,000 chapters worldwide. That's teambni.com. And what conference college equivalent do you think the MCC is? I say Mountain West. Jamie says Big Sky. Want to know what you think? 510-858-1340. Coming back next on 1340 ESPN.
BNI, where we believe in the giver's gain. Word of mouth and personal recommendations go a long way in the world of business. If you're looking to give your business an edge, consider BNI. With multiple chapters in the Tri-Cities and surrounding areas, it makes it easy to find the right people to take your business to the next level. Over 10,000 chapters worldwide and billions of dollars passed, and thank you for closed business to the members. To visit a chapter near you, go on teambni.com. Find out why the giver's gain works.
MCC Live continues on the Tri-Cities leader in sports, 1340 ESPN.
MCC Live with Jamie Council of Intangible Media. You have your own website, and tell people more about Intangible Media, Jamie.
I do stuff with NFHS here at the high school level, radio show here.
Yeah, she's on 1340 ESPN also.
Your local leader in sports. As well as I do stuff with ESPN Plus and Cap KView, some non-sports hosting. So it's really fun going independent and freelancing and figuring out along the way. So it's been a fun ride, but you can keep up with me. I have a professional page on Facebook at Jamie Council, and then my personal other social medias are at Jamie Council TV and also on Instagram at Intangible Media as well.
All right, at MCC Live, this segment is brought to you by As You Wish, Staging and Design. We can make your home all about you. As You Wish, Staging and Design, proud supporter of high school athletics. And I know that Christine, owner of As You Wish, very excited that we're talking about girls basketball in this segment. And there's a lot to talk about in this segment with girls basketball. The Kamiakin Braves still unbeaten in the MCC.
They had a great week. I tell you what, one thing we talked about in the show last week was Kennewick had the upset over Chiawana, and I was like, well, maybe that they'll have a chance going to Kamiakin. And Kamiakin, the girls, it was just a blowout. They showed up to play, and they're really focusing on being the best they can be, and they're not getting in their head. They're playing really great basketball right now. Like I said, I was checking the scores, and it's something where I'm excited about this team, where they have 2 Division I players. It's a senior-driven team. In their past 2 games, they played Walla, won 79-47. The game against Kennewick that I thought would be close was 61-35. Before there, it was Southridge, 62-23. Since their 1-point win against Chiawana, they have gone off. So I think the win against Chiawana by 1 point was really a wake-up call for the Braves.
I've heard that the 1-point win over Chiawana is a game that should have an asterisk next to it.
So in that game, there was a shot that the ball bounced up and hit the scoreboard, like up where the hoop connects to the rafters and like where the shooting clock, and that makes it a dead ball.
Because it's out of bounds.
Because it's out of bounds. And then it went in and the ref counted it. They didn't see it. So that's 2 points. Yeah, I was there. I saw it. It happened. But, if a team knows they're down, that's not to say that Nicole Thomas would have been like, okay, now I'm going to throw up a 3 and make sure we get the win. Good teams know how to win. But in the grand scheme of things, there was 2 points. That shouldn't have counted.
When in the game did that happen?
It happened, I believe it was in the third quarter.
So it was still early enough. It wasn't like the last shot of the game or anything.
No. It wasn't. That's why nobody made a big deal. Or they're just like, Kaya Foster was beneath the hoop, and she just was like, but then everybody moved on. There's still plenty of game time. So that's why I said there is an asterisk, because 2 points shouldn't have counted. But at the same time, there's plenty of game left to make sure that you get the win. One of my coaches always said that you need to beat your opponents and the referees. That's just our thing.
Don't rely on getting referees' calls at the end. You got to make sure you're beating your opponent. That was an impressive shot, though. I will say, if they were playing horse, you'd totally run the table with that. Yeah, it's going to go off the scoreboard, and that's quite a bit of touch off the scoreboard and in.
It's like those YouTube videos of the trick shots.
Yeah,
it's just
dude,
like,
perfect, guys.
You can't play basketball, but you can throw it out of a moving car to, or there's some crazy ones out there.
Yeah, you watch a 40-second video of these guys doing these tricks, but they don't show you the 12 hours that they spent doing it wrong. And then they show you the one time they got it right.
Yeah, right. That's what I think about. I'm like, how many times did they do that? And one of my friends I worked with in the news industry over in the Midwest, he actually had a trick shot video that went viral. He was a long snapper. It was impressive to watch, but that's kind of what he hangs his hat on, is I do trick shots as a long snapper. And he played, I think it was Division III football, and was a long snapper, and now he works in sports as an announcer. But yeah, when it comes to trick shots, that kind of who comes to mind.
On the internet with that stuff.
Yeah, they're real people.
Yeah, they're real people and everything. Kamiakin girls are 10th in RPI. They've cracked the top 10, 13-0 in the conference. But not surprisingly, a team that's undefeated in the conference, they've scored the most points of any team in the league.
Yeah, they're averaging just below 70, and their defense, second in the league, they're averaging just over 43 points. So Kamiakin has always been a defensive first team, but they also are putting up the points. So they're looking really good, and this is their first time cracking into the top 10 in the past few weeks.
Richland right behind them at 11-2, 17th in the state in RPI. They finally found some depth. Depth is important, as you've talked about before.
Yeah, I mean, Kylie Fox, she's going to Fresno State, a Division I player. She was two-time MCC Player of the Year. She knows how to score, so everybody's going to be looking at her. And that was something that I think Amy Westerfield did was she came into the season. Fox dished the ball. And she has taken this role, and that's why they struggled, because there have other people stepping up. I mean, Fox, she's always going to get her point. She's sixth in the MCC. I think she moved up a couple of spots. She's averaging 15.12 points a game. So, I mean, it's not like she's not scoring, but she could be putting up a lot bigger numbers, but she has really taken it to heart to dish the ball. And then when you take a look, Macy Milam is sitting with 13 points, and Leanna Lepe also on that, Lexi Hay and Maggie Smith. So all of their top 5 are in the top 25 in scoring. Amy Westerfield did a great job of seeing the bigger picture, and Fox has done wonderful of taking on this new role. So down the stretch, people aren't looking at Richland girls, but they might need to, as they have really solidified their depth, and that's something I'm excited to see.
And one thing you know about teams that are really deep, they play strong defense because you don't have tired athletes out there, and they have by far the lowest amount of points given up in the conference. They have the best point differential of any team in the conference, even bigger than Kamiakin.
Yeah, the point differential, 26.8. Richland is ahead. Kamiakin, 26.3. So it is close, but Richland, they're not really a big team, but they're so fast.
Yeah.
Milam, she is really like sneaky almost, that they have all the steals. So they're really fun to watch because they're a very quick and athletic team. You're always going to expect Richland basketball, boys or girls, very fast-paced offense, very fast-paced defense. They're really good athletes over there, and I feel like when it comes to defense, being a really good athlete kind of plays into that, where somebody doesn't have to be a great athlete to be able to knock down threes or do certain things, but on defense, you really have to, because you can't just body somebody up, and, you know, there's a lot more to it, and Richland has that.
Both boys and girls in the conference, there's a clear top 2. We were talking about Chiawana being the clear number 3 on the boys' side. Who's number 3 on the girls' side, do you think, in the conference? Because we got Kennewick, Chiawana, and Walla. There's a logjam right there in the middle tier of the conference. Yeah,
I mean, Kennewick beat Chiawana. Chiawana is 25th in the RPI. Kennewick is unranked when it comes to that. So the loss against Kennewick kind of makes you take a look at Kennewick, but then you take a look at Kamiakin, and you're like, what is going on? But that's just the MCC. If you don't show up to play, anybody can beat anybody. Yeah. Maybe it's just because I've watched them play a bit more, you know, like we were talking about in last segment, you're familiar with something. But Chiawana, again, when it comes to consistency, they're a young team. They have 2 seniors. Their seniors bring leaderships, but their seniors aren't their top point getters. Their top point getters are sophomores and freshmen. They have a starting point guard in Melendez, a freshman. Their sophomore, Malia Rude, she's second in scoring in the MCC, averaging 18.5 points a game. And then Kaya Foster, 8th in scoring, averaging 13.78. She had a 30-point game just a couple of weeks ago. When it comes to younger players, there is that mental aspect of that inconsistency. And so that's something I would say Chiawana, they have the higher ceiling, but they're just kind of young of a team that I think this year they just need to pull it as far as they can go. It would be great if they were able to do something, but they're really building on what they have next year.
Once again with the girls, just like the boys, the top scorers, 7 different schools are represented in the top 7. A lot of balanced scoring in the conference.
Yeah, one thing I noticed on the girls' side, more so than the boys, is the boys' teams have one big score for them. You know, Josh Woodard, Peter Dress, 2 and 3. On the girls' side, out of the top schools, the closest one is 6 and 7. Kylie Fox of Richland and Nicole Thomas of Kamiakin. And the girls' teams are more balanced than the boys' teams when it comes to scoring. So I found that really interesting when you're taking a look at that. But yeah, top scores, Izzy Simmons out of Hermiston. Hermiston, they have people that know how to score. and she was good as a freshman. Then she got hurt, and as she's having a great sophomore year, she's leading the MCC in scoring, just short of 19 points a game. Malia Rude, like we were talking about, 18.5. And then third is Linnea Moran out of Hanford. She's averaging just below 16.5 points a game, the younger sister of Ileana Moran, and she graduated last year, a great player. Number 4, Haley Johnson of Kennewick, just above 16. And then Mariah Lopez out of Pasco, she's averaging 15.5.
She's the star on a Bulldogs team that... What's going on with the Pasco Bulldogs, Jamie?
I mean, it's really hard on paper to understand because you're like, what? They finished third in state, and even third at state was a low finish for that team.
Yeah.
They graduated their 3 top seniors. They lost Leanna Lepe to Kamiakin. Nothing weird. She moved. And so Stacey Beal has had a tough time in her first year as head coach. It's really great that they do have Mariah Lopez, the only player on last year's team. And then they've had 3 season-ending injuries for their players.
Wow.
When they suited up against Chiawana, they had 7 players playing. So you have a team that doesn't have that experience. You have one player that is Mariah Lopez, and they're really building from ground zero.
That would affect any program. The things you're describing that happened to the Bulldogs, that would affect any program. Losing people to graduation, losing people to injury, that would decimate any program.
It would. So that is why I just want to applaud the Pasco girls for that. And that's one thing I did see for the Pasco boys. Nobody likes to lose. It's not saying that they're okay with losing. That's not what I'm saying. But when I watched the Chiawana and Pasco game, that is, you can kind of see it in the players' shoulders where they're like, what is the point? Like
the body language.
Body language.
Yeah.
And the Pasco boys, I mean, they have size. This year, 2 of their starters, 6'5", 6'8", and they have size. They have a lot of pieces, but sometimes they'll put together good shifts, but then they're like, oh, now we're down 10, and they kind of give up. That it's really hard right now when you don't have wins and you don't have the players, and you can't put it all together. It puts a lot more on the shoulders of the leaders on the team and of the coaches. Terry Watson has his work cut out for him with the Pasco boys, but there is some talent over there. So I think that is a part of sports. You might be on those programs, but the only thing you can do is look at the positives and get better. And I mean, take a look at Southridge football. They went from not winning a single MCC game, and then all of a sudden they're making it into playoffs.
Yeah.
Just a couple years later, and that was due purely to mindset. And it's not like, oh, some transfer came over and there wasn't any magic player that came in. It was the same players over at Southridge. They just changed their mindset under Matt Johnson, hit the weight room, and then became those players. I mean, it was an amazing transformation, and I just hope that Pasco will do the same, and that would be, such a great story. And that was a story that the Pasco girls last year was like, Pasco pride is not dead. Here we are. And I love to see it because Pasco athletics, they have a couple good ones. Boys soccer, last year girls basketball, but a lot of them that do struggle. So that was something. Pasco pride, there's going to be ebbs and flows, and it's all just part of the process.
Pride comes within. You can't look at the standings. You still got to have Pasco pride. Let me tell you. And we're coming back. We're going to talk about the matchups. There's some big matchups, especially on basketball for this weekend. That's coming up next on 1340 ESPN and the Tri-Cities leader in sports. This segment of MCC Live brought to you by As You Wish, Staging and Design. We'd make your home all about you. As You Wish, Staging and Design. Proud supporter of high school athletics, as are we. MCC Live, Jamie Council, Will Bradley, 1340 ESPN.
You never get a second chance to make a first impression. As You Wish Staging and Design can prepare your home for the market by either bringing all new furniture and decorations or incorporating your own beautiful pieces to save some cash and make your furniture work for you. As You Wish Staging can also rejuvenate your space with their design services. Why buy a home when you can fall in love with your space all over again? Make the space all about you. Realtors, builders, homeowners, offices, Airbnb, and so much more. Check out As You Wish Staging and Design and get a free consultation.
This is MCC Live on 1340 ESPN.
All right, we're back. One final segment of MCC Live, 1340 ESPN, and it's brought to you by Central Church of Richland. Every Wednesday through March 29th, they're offering free Dave Ramsey courses to the public. Those start at 6:30, but they have free dinner at 6 o'clock as well. A non-denominational church, Central Church of Richland. They're located a block north of Catholic Hospital in Richland, cupchurch.org. This weekend, by the way, Jamie, is a great opportunity for you to go on out and support your team, support your schools, or if you don't even have a dog in the fight, just go out and see some kids. The quality of play in the Mid-Columbia Conference is really, really good.
It is, and you're supporting local, you're supporting a great cause, which is high school athletics. And this weekend, if you've been on the fence, this weekend is the time to do it, and it starts tonight.
Kamiakin and Richland, 545 Richland High School. First the girls, top 2 in the conference.
And the boys, top 2 in the conference. So tonight, Kamiakin and Richland. If Richland wins on the boys' side, they secure the MCC title. If Kamiakin wins, they hand Richland their first loss. Kamiakin has 2 losses. And so then they would have to think, okay, maybe Richland is going to implode and lose a second one. Therefore, they would be co-MCC champions. But if they win, Kamiakin gets 3 losses with 2 left in the season, it would be out of reach. So Richland can secure the MCC title tonight on the boys' side. That game at 7:30, but at 5:45, the same thing is happening, but with the Kamiakin girls. And also, I did want to say that the Bomber boys are undefeated at the Art Daywald gym. Kamiakin girls are coming into Bomber territory, and the same thing with them. Richland girls sit with 2 losses. Kamiakin undefeated. So if the Kamiakin girls win tonight, they win the MCC. If Richland wins, they still have a chance.
There's a lot of high drama there. Kennewick, Walla also tonight in Walla. Chiawana at Hanford, Southridge at Pasco. Those are the matchups tonight. And then tomorrow, we have Richland, Kennewick, Chiawana, Hermiston, Hanford, Southridge, Pasco, Kamiakin. Those are girls and boys basketball this weekend. But there's other MCC events going on too, Jamie.
Yeah, we're getting into playoffs for other sports and wrestling. It starts this weekend. The 3A wrestling tournament for MCC is in Walla because when it comes to playoffs, you kind of split ways. So it's interesting that we have 2 different classifications in our league. And Hermiston has a great program, so they'll be in Walla. And then the 4A tournament is in Richland. And Chiawana, we talked last week that they won an MCC title. We talked last week that they won the MCC title, but some questions come up where they are 3-peat state champions. So they're sitting on a pedestal, but also underdogs. And I had a chance to catch up with Manuel Plata, the head coach over there in his first year, about what to expect. And it starts tomorrow.
This week is our district tournament, which is just mostly the teams in our league. The following will be regionals, and that's when we'll see Sunnyside, the Big 9. And so it'll be, I think, the top 5 from that district and the top 4 from our district will have an 8-man bracket, and then the top 4 will eventually qualify to state in 2 weeks. So next week will be really a test to see where we're at against Sunnyside, because I know they are pretty much the favorites right now. That will allow us to know where we're at against them. Maybe if we have some matchups, that will allow me to have another week to prepare and hopefully get them at state. And at the end of the day, that's the ultimate goal, is to win a state title. So if we possibly have a couple slip-ups during regionals, it will allow us an extra week to fix our mistakes and hopefully get them back at the state tournament. But the way our group has been wrestling and preparing, I think we're sitting pretty well. I like our chances at districts, regionals, and at state. So I'm really looking forward for these next 3 weeks. The boys have been putting in a lot of work. They're excited. I'm excited. And so I think at the end of the day, I think we're going to be where we want to be, and that's winning the state title.
And just talk about how you guys are preparing, where, like I said, it's kind of is the long game, where some wrestlers were in and out of injuries. I remember even like Tate Sisney, when your win over Hermiston, like getting back in the lineup that day. So a lot kind of changes throughout the season. So what are you guys doing now as the final stretch? Well, it's here.
Just trying to get everybody healthy, eligible, just getting them prepared as best as they can. I know, like you said, we've had injuries throughout the season. We've had multiple things go on where I told the guys the other day that districts might be the first time where we will have our full team from beginning to end. We haven't had our whole team in the lineup at all this season. So that's kudos to these guys, though, the younger guys who have stepped in and helped us win league title. But as we prepare for this final stretch, we're just wanting guys to get healthy. Putting a little extra time right now. We're doing a little bit of 2-a-days, a little harder practice in the mornings, and then a little lighter practice in the evening, and just making sure that everybody's dialed in. We just want everybody to continue to hang out with each other. I've always felt like, when you spend a lot of time with your wrestling buddies, it makes it a lot more enjoyable because, you're not the only one going through the grind. And I think we're coming together. We're starting to gel more as a family, as one. And so as we hit this stretch, I think that's going to be the biggest thing, is making sure that we're there for one another, no matter what it is, especially after those tough losses. We got to make sure that we're there for our guys, because we're going to need them to come through the back door, especially if we want to win a state title.
And we're kind of bearing the lead on this, where the last time we talked, you're kind of vying for that league title, and by beating Hermiston, that really, kind of put you on your way. But congratulations on the MCC title, your first year as head coach. I mean, that was kind of a nice thing to hang your hat on, even though the season's not over.
Yes, that was definitely one of the goals, is to win league. Like I told the boys when we won it, that was one step closer to our ultimate goal of winning a state title. And I know when we won the league, we still had a few other matches to go. But I knew our guys were still going to prepare and train, because at the end of the day, we want to win a state title. So we got to continue to grind and continue to work. And yes, we celebrated Tate and Zach's big wins to allow us to win the MCC, and it was great for myself. The boys really came through for me, and I know they were super pumped up to win the MCC, and especially beat Hermiston, a tough team with multiple starters out. So it was excellent. And I think from that match, I think it's really been all uphill since then. We've been really coming together as one and really being there for each other. And I think that's gonna, at the end of the day, back on it, I think that's gonna bring our springboard to the state title.
Wrestling's definitely be something to check out this weekend. Also, girls bowling.
Yeah, so the 3A tournament has already taken place. So it's February 1st through 4th. In Tukwila, and Kennewick Bowling, we heard from them last week. They finished second in state. So
all right.
Congratulations to Kennewick Bowling. And Courtney Foss, we heard her last week. She finished 5th individually. And also in the MCC, Lily Fields of Hermiston finished 9th. So in the MCC for 3A bowling, 2 top 10 finishes.
Fantastic. Support your team. Support these athletes. Check out some high school sports here in the Tri-Cities. There's some good matchups this week. And thank you, of course, for listening to MCC Live on 1340 ESPN. We do it every Friday at 2 o'clock. You can listen to the show on demand at 1340ESPNradio.com. You can also check it out anywhere you get your podcasts.
Yeah, Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you get your podcast, just search for MCC Live, and you can listen to it on your drive. So multiple ways to listen.
Have a great weekend.
You too. Have a great weekend.
And we'll talk to you soon. It's 1340 ESPN. This is MCC Live. We're going back to regular Seattle sports programming with Wyman and Bob. That's next on the Tri-Cities Leader in Sports.